Hi, my name is Matt Wilhelmi, and I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And today I'm joined by Francesca Kenney, CPA. She is a best-selling author, and Brian Keltner, an international award-winning marketer, both from greenorchid.co, a holistic approach to consulting and businesses. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks,
Matt. Appreciate being here.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to today's talk. You know, we've talked a lot about this idea of pitching and investments and banking and lending and how do people get money and what do they need to show and how does it all work? And you two have put together quite the business, quite the process for helping people through finding investors, putting together pitch decks, and that is what we're going to focus on today. Could you bring the viewers into this concept of pitch decks first? Maybe from just like a high level, what is a pitch deck? What is it for? Who needs one? Just broad. And then what I want to do is dive really deep into this specific case study that we were talking about. I'm really excited to get into it. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe starting at the high level, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think I could do that fairly quickly for your listeners and viewers. Is a pitch deck is a communication piece, and if I said it was a slideshow on paper or online, that might be a way of doing it. But it is a communication piece of where your business is and where it's going, and it tells a story of who you are, what your business does, also the story of the finances, all incorporated to communicate to your VC funder what you're about. And so if I said just simply a communication piece, I think that would be very accurate.
So you just used the term in the industry, right? VC funder. I just want to make sure that we can bring people into what that actually means. Now I know it's a venture capitalist, but who are these VCs? Are they growing on trees? Like, how do you find one?
Well, we find them through our network, and people reach out to us wanting to be part of our organization. And it could be everybody has a specialty. So if we have an opening for a particular type, I could say in the tech industry, there's a lot of people that want to fund in the tech industry. So we find them when they find us through our process of just networking as business owners.
I'm going to add to that. So there's angel investors, there's regular investors. Sometimes you're looking for a bank. So there's a lot of different places that you can go. So depending upon what the company is and what the products are, is what we're going to be looking for to help you get your funding.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of nuances to a VC. It's not maybe a one size fits all. There's niches, there's specialties, there's experience and background and understanding of different business models. And so you guys have this process. You know, if I were to maybe, again, think about the high level overview, there's kind of, you're playing kind of two different sides of the equation. There's the people who need the money, and then there's the people who have the money. And you have a process of vetting both sides of that to be able to kind of be the matchmaker, right? That's what a pitch deck does. It illustrates both sides of that equation, I bet.
Being a matchmaker was very well stated, Matt. That's between the people looking and the people able to help.
And I'm going to add one more thing to that, Matt. There's coaching that needs to be done when you're going to present a pitch deck. And so Brian and I have a network of people who will go ahead and sit in on a pitch and provide feedback before you actually get in front of your prospective investor, VC, whoever. So we offer that as well to be able to help you practice that pitch.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a little bit of education that you guys do. You know, I think about Shark Tank. That's immediately where I think of when you start talking about pitch decks and VC. And, you know, I'm not saying you guys have this amazing TV show just yet, but what I am saying is that I remember a few episodes where somebody like Mark Cuban is going to sniff out somebody who's done a lot of coaching, and somebody who is maybe raw and done it their first time. They're very nervous. They don't know their numbers really well. They don't have a really great way of presenting themselves and being confident, but there's definitely a difference between the two. And so you guys would help practice and help present and get them ready to go, right?
Yeah,
We would. And I think there's little bit of a difference or nuance in there is that we know who they're going to be pitching to because we've already made that match. So we know how they want their, if they're a numbers person, then the numbers are important. Hit the numbers. If they're more, I want to know who your team is, then we work on who's the team. And we bring that so it's a good match. It's just not, hey, a general, we don't know who you're going to be in front of. We know exactly who you're going to be in front of and what they're looking for.
Yeah, I know. I think it's Kevin O'Leary who on Shark Tank has very famously said he's never seen a projection he doesn't like, and it's almost intuitive to put your best foot forward and to really have a good grasp of your numbers. But then the second most important thing is, in my mind, and this is maybe what you can help us figure out today, is how do we articulate that story of here's where they're at today. You're going to give them this money, and they're going to go up. And they're going to do these great things, and being able to walk somebody through that story is probably part of, I would guess, a pitch deck, right?
Yeah.
That and what's your origin story? Because people love an origin story. So
you got to sell a little bit. You got to have they're a hardworking person. They went to school, or maybe they're a single parent, or whatever their story is. I think that's their background, right? They've done this before. They're all in. They've got some skin in the game, all of those kinds of terms. So thank you for kind of helping me think about this high level. What does a pitch deck do? Why are we even talking about it? So now I want to think about this specific case study. You and I have talked about this particular client of yours who needed some money, and they found you guys through your network. I've heard a lot of people say that your net worth is equal to your network. So they found you guys. And tell me a little bit about that first couple of conversations. How did it go?
So I think the first conversations were, they had this great plan. They wanted to expand on what they were doing, and they just didn't know how to do it, right? So they didn't, how are we going to go get investors? Here's the plan. Here's what we want to do. It sounded great. Help me get to getting funding so that we can move forward with this plan and have a legacy for my family.
Yeah, I would think there might need to be a little bit more clarity on like who would be a great person to try and do something like this. I work with lots of different businesses, and I'm sure you guys do too. There's a very big difference, and there's not one better than the other, but there's a big difference between maybe like a family ran bakery, or maybe it's a college dropout who invested in a tech app and it's got millions of users, or a family business that maybe is having a down quarter or a couple of down quarters and needs some funding. And so there's probably a bit of your process where you're pulling out this background. And so with this particular case study that we're talking about, what's kind of if you had to describe them in a few different ways, what are they doing? What kind of business is it? Is it service? Is it product? Help me understand a little bit more about this particular client.
Yeah. So this was basically an event center, and they had a couple of different products they were selling. So they were selling retail products, hard goods, but then they were also hosting a number of different events. And it was located outside of a major U.S. city. And they sounded great with all the different things they were providing, the services, who was showing up, how that was all working. And so it sounded like a really great opportunity. And they wanted to expand on this. They wanted to put on buildings on the property so that they could host bigger events. They had a lot of key things and were saying the right things that, as we sat and listened, that yes, this can work. This can go.
Okay. So I just heard a few things that I'd love to break down. There was a retail company. They had hard goods, that they were selling, but they were also doing event hosting. And those could not be more different, I don't think, in the very basics of a financial model. I don't mean necessarily that it would be crazy for them to do that. It probably makes sense for their particular niche or what they're up to. But from a financial perspective, as an investor thinking about buying into this company or investing or helping them out, I would want to see those financials, because I want to know the percentage of retail, the percentage of event hosting, where is the revenue, what are the costs, is there overlap in staff, is there differences in staff? Those are just some of the initial questions. And I would imagine that your process really kind of dials that in, right? You take this huge idea that, yeah, they're doing it, but they've never really articulated it. And you guys are able to, through your process, really kind of dial that in, make it a very tight and crisp presentation, right?
And so the products that they were selling were key to the event space. So everything that they were selling and putting together, they could sell to the people that were coming to the event. So it was a marriage with what they were doing. And so it worked. It made total sense. And it was an opportunity to bring in additional revenue with what they were able to sell at the event center. And they could also do, so let's say you're doing, you're hosting a big convention or something and you need swag or something to that effect. They were able to put that together. So everything they were doing made total sense.
That's great. I think about this type of a business, and one of the things that maybe they don't think about, but I'm sure you do and your VCs do, is who's actually running this business on the day-to-day. Is it the owner, or is it maybe a manager? Is it a team? Is it a professional manager? Maybe the owner has some adult children that are college graduates or in college or just figuring it out. Like, who's actually running this business?
That's a great question, Matt. So this was completely family owned. And I'm going to throw in another little monkey wrench here. The event center was going to be on the family's property. So
okay.
Very, very interesting.
Add a little bit of an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had to do some research on how was that going to be handled.
Yeah, I would think just from like a liabilities perspective, you'd probably want to know that. And then the next question is maybe like, is liquor being sold? And then like, do we have licenses for these types of things? Investors that are savvy would want to make sure that they're not going to get sued for something that they should have just asked the question for in the first place. And so
right.
I would imagine you guys did a little bit more question and answer sessions there. And so the family ran business. Was it mom and dad running the company? Was it brother, sister? Was it mom, son? Like, just what are the family dynamics there?
So the entire family, mom, dad, and the kids.
Immediate family though, right?
Spouses. Not like yeah. No, just all immediate family.
Okay. And did everybody have like a role, or was everybody just like, let's show up every day and figure it out?
No, they were very distinct with what the roles were and what everybody had to do for their piece.
Great. Yeah, I think when I am kind of piecing together an image of this business, I think about the financials. We kind of talked about having those different business models broken out. You'd want to see the revenue from each line item broken out. But, Brian, I think you brought up the background piece in that pitch deck, and you'd really want to make sure that the roles, if they are specified, are called out, so that maybe the backgrounds and how that lines up with those roles are also articulated correctly. When you guys were putting this together, did anyone maybe rise to the top in terms of, okay, who's like the final decision maker, or was everything just like by committee?
No, there was a decision maker. There was a CEO, if you will, within the family and designated as such. So that really wasn't an issue. I think having that expansion family and they're already pressed doing events now, just not in the same location, and how they wanted to step up their game, they were going to need more people than what their family could produce.
I see. So another big piece of your pitch deck, I would think, is what is the money going to be used for? And I would imagine a VC is not going to want to hear a few things. They're probably not going to want to hear the word yacht. They're probably not going to want to hear, the word vacation or time off or I need to make my life easier. Like, that's not what they want to hear. So what kinds of things were they thinking about using the money for, and how did you kind of guide that conversation? I'm curious.
So it was basically broken down into two sections. The first section was we need to put a building on the property. So we had the budgets for that. We had the drawings, the pictures, we had those pieces. The other piece of it was there were capital type items that we needed to buy. So people movers, some other different items on that capital. So we had a complete list of what those capital items were going to be.
Got it. And so there's probably a difference in your approach if somebody were to come in and say, well, I don't really want to change too much, but I need, money to maybe fund a few new orders, or, we took on some bigger orders than we're used to, and we need funding for that, versus this situation where they're kind of expanding operations, right? It's not like a totally different idea. It's not like it's somebody who's doing one thing today and then trying to convince a VC that they can do something different. This is almost like, we've definitely thought about it. It's the same thing we're doing, but maybe on a larger scale, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to add into that. We also took into consideration, because part of the event center was going to have to be closed for a little while building was going. So we needed to have cash flow to keep everything moving as well. And so as we were getting ready to start the new event center, obviously you still had to do marketing, because now you've got this big event center that's going to open. So we needed to keep that buzz going and get bookings coming in. So you still needed staff, because you had an opening date that was going to happen. So as soon as you open, you're booked. And so we had to include that into the financials so that we understood the total amount of money that we needed.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to use my favorite term, cash flow. I think about businesses as a cash flow formula. I'm hoping that the advice is somewhere along the lines of, we need to be having more coming in than going out, from a very basic perspective, right? Because there might be a period of time where it's expected to be the opposite, but that shouldn't be forever. And it should be called out as such to a VC, I would think, so that there's a very clear understanding. I'm going to give you money on day one. When does the money start flowing back to the VC? Is that 90 days? Is that a year? Is that 5 years? I mean, what does the cash flow look like? And so you guys put those together as well, the cash flow forecasts for clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were cash positive after 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's important to know. And then maybe the follow-up question to that a savvy investor would ask is, what kind of benchmarks along the way can I see or know about, so that we're on target, so that I don't wake up on the day that I'm expecting a payment and, surprise, surprise, I'm not getting one and I don't know why. That would be probably very frustrating. So what kind of benchmarks, is that also part of the process? Is like, well, we've identified, and you don't have to give me specifics on this particular case study, but I would imagine there are some benchmarks, right?
Absolutely. So when we built out the forecast for this, we knew exactly for each product that was being sold what we were anticipating, the number that we would sell in a year. We knew what the margin was, right? So from there, as long as we were hitting those key targets, we knew we were in good shape. So the forecast was built out for 5 years, down to how many events, what we were going to sell, what level package people were taking. And we also looked at additional services that we did not include in the forecast, because we knew that would be extra cushion for us. And so and we called that out. So we, like affiliate programs, photographers, etc., that we would go ahead and sell and earn commission off of, or an affiliate program, but we didn't include that. But we called that out, that these services are not included in the budget.
So I'm really looking forward to our next episode, where we're going to talk about some cautionary tales. We're going to go through maybe what could have gone better, or some advice that maybe you've given that would help them navigate some of these cautionary tales. And I'm really looking forward to unpacking that with you guys here in just a minute. Stay tuned.